This is Lydia's Books of Terror, and I am Lydia. Thank you for stopping by. Today, I want to talk about the new books coming out in July. So there are quite a lot, and a Canadian collection as well, which is super exciting. But yeah, there was no weekly reads last week. There will be one coming up this week where I'll have a little bit of a wrap up on Reading in Rumps, the Richard Lehman Readathon, and some of the books that I've been picking up. I went to my hometown favorite bookstore, Allison the Bookman, and picked up a couple really cool things. So we'll talk about that very soon. But first, new books coming out that may be out right now. First up on July 1st, which is today, Happy Canada Day, everybody, Come Knocking, a novel by Mike Bockoven, or Bockoven. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Bockoven? I'm not sure. But the cover is kind of eye-catching because it has this sort of slanted comic sans serif font, and it's in this bright pumpkin orange, and there's a grainy black and white image of like a mask or something. So it's very creepy looking. I was interested in that choice of a font that's kind of comic-y because this is like a theatrical thing. Reminds me of some of the things that Kathy Koja was putting on in New York. When Come Knocking came to Los Angeles, the interactive theater production that took over 6 floors of an abandoned building was met with raves, lines for tickets, and reviews calling it a must-see experience of a generation. But after dozens of people were killed and hundreds in a bloody night of chaos during the show's run, the nation was captured by one inescapable question. How could this happen? As the dust settles, investigative reporter Adam Jakes is tasked with uncovering the truth behind the massacre. Through a series of gripping interviews with survivors, cast members, and witnesses, Jakes pieces together the chilling reality behind what was supposed to be the ultimate theatrical experience. My question was something like this, as always: is it intentional? Were they meaning to kill hundreds of people? Was that the immersive theatrical experience? For the 1st of July, for Canada Day, we have Dark Canadiana, an anthology of Canadian horror. This comes from Iron Fang Press, a new press that I've not heard of, so I'm very interested. Hopefully, if I'm lucky, I will catch up with them at DreadCon. Happens in September. It's a Canadian literary festival for horror, and hopefully this press will be represented there. Maybe I'll pick up a copy of this book there too. There's a few other books on this list. It's pretty Canadian heavy, so there's some books that I already want to do pick up at DreadCon. The cover has a Canadian flag. It's torn in the center, and it's got some blood splatter on it. So very, very eye-catching, a little bit dark, very cool looking. So yes, Canada, a land full of beautiful landscapes, wildlife, diverse people, and poutine. A land overflowing with dark history, local legends, cryptid, serial killers, and so much more. Explore the dark side of Canada in this anthology of short stories by these truly Canadian authors. And I will say this includes Con Lavery and Steve Stratt at the very least, and quite a few other names. Lots of names. Lots that I don't recognize, so that'll be very exciting to me. Also on July 1st, we have what appears to me to be a bit of a folk horror that remains to be seen. It's called Little White Flowers by Amber Hathaway, and it has sort of like a childish drawing of what looks like a little Hansel and Gretel in the forest on the cover. When she and her brother venture to Evanston, Maine to clean out an estranged relative's estate, horror enthusiast Alex Drayson's life begins paralleling her favorite page-turners. The sojourn in their grandmother's wicked hometown provides the perfect opportunity for Alice to delve into Grammy's mysterious past. However, she soon discovers that the horrific event that drove Grammy away is but one small piece of the town's blighted history. Confronted with increasing hostility from Evanston's insular religious community as she closes in on the truth, Alice must risk everything to save lives. Her soft-spoken new neighbor, Riley Moore, seems to have answers and some dark secrets of her own. Can Alice trust him to help her put an end to Evanston's wicked practices, or will she become yet another casualty? It smacks of YA, does it not? I very interested from the cover and that premise. I always like going back to a small hometown kind of thing, right? More Canadiana on July 1st. We have My Ex The Antichrist by Craig DiLouie. And the cover is very, very visual, very graphic. It's mainly black with red text, and it's laid over this black album vinyl. The sans serif text is really set off by this like white cross as the T, and a mix of letter form sans serif, almost calligraphic text. It's just very artful, very well put together. You have to look at it kind of twice to realize that it may be about music, right? Like, because of the album vinyl in the background. 1998, Lily Lawler and Drake Morgan form a punk band. Drake inspires faith in some, fear in others. Lily is a believer. 1999, a battle of the bands ends in a shocking death and a riot that claims the lives of 3 teenagers. 2009, at the height of her stardom, Lily walks into a police station and confesses to murder. Now, the band has refused to talk to the press about the night of the riot, Lily's confession, or anything else. It's been over a decade, but Lily has finally agreed to an interview, and the band is following her lead. What follows is a story of prophecy, death, and apocalypse, a story about love and love lost, a story about the Antichrist. Maybe it's all true, maybe none of it is. So yeah, very interested to read something by Craig DiLouie. Eventually, I still haven't. There's been 2 books at least on these new releases lists that have jumped out at me, and I just haven't done it. I think part of it is I'm always looking for Craig DiLouie books at local used bookstores and the library book sales. I never see any. It's very odd. But hey, I'll have to make a special trip. On July 8th, we have How to Survive a Horror Story, a novel by Mallory Arnold, and I think that this poor book will run a little confusion between all of the other How to Make a Horror Movie, How to Survive a Horror Story, Horror Movie, all those books about how to make horror movies or people making horror movies, or have the title about make a horror movie, something like that. And I read the title to this and thought, haven't we not talked about this already? But How to Survive a Horror Story, a novel by Mallory Arnold. The cover is really kind of plain too. It's got this black background that you don't realize what it is at first, or at least I didn't. And it's got this magenta text that covers a lot of it. And then you realize it really resembles an invitation envelope and then has a wax seal, kind of ornate wax seal in the center. So that's eye-catching and interesting as well. So when legendary horror author Mortimer Queen passes, a group of writers find themselves invited to his last will and testament reading, expecting a piece of his massive fortune. Each have their own unique connection with the literary icon, some known, some soon to be discovered, and they've been waiting for their chance to step into the author's shoes for some time. Instead, they arrive at this grand manor and are invited to play a game. The rules are simple. Solve the riddle and progress to the next room, and if they don't, the manor will take one of them for itself. You see, the Queen estate was built on the bones of Mortimer's family, and like any true horror story, the house is still very, very hungry. I like this. I like this quite a lot. I really hope that it doesn't suffer the fate of all the Final Girl books that came out at the same time, the horror story books that came out at the same time. I hope that this is one that gets read and noticed. On July 15th, we have a twofer, as they say. It is a 2 books in 1 collector's edition of Killer on the Road and The Babysitter Lives by Stephen Graham Jones. So one book is printed upside down and bound to the back of the other book. In Canada, we would expect that this is a bilingual edition of something. That's very common to have the one language one way and the other language the other way. But yes, it has a duotone image of a farmhouse on one and a face on the other, and there's a tear that runs across them both. They both have this duotone yellow on black look with fat serif text that we're getting used to seeing related to this particular author. And according to the publishers on the spine, it seems that Killer on the Road is the front facing if you were to put this on the shelf properly. So with The Babysitter Lives, Charlotte's last babysitting gig almost ended in tragedy when her young charge sleepwalked unnoticed into the middle of the street, only to be found unharmed by Charlotte's mother. Charlotte vows to be extra careful this time, but the house is filled with mysterious noises and secrets that only the twins understand, echoes of horrors that Charlotte gradually realizes took place in the house 11 years ago. Soon Charlotte has to admit that every babysitter's worst nightmare has come true, and they're not alone in the house. So I've never heard of this particular story, neither have I heard of the other one, The Killer on the Road, but I've heard more buzz for Killer on the Road. 16-year-old Harper has decided to run away from home after she has another blowout argument with her mother. However, her two best friends, little sister and ex-boyfriend, all stop her from hitchhiking her way into Route 80 in Wyoming by joining her on an intervention disguised as a road trip. What they don't realize is that Harper has been marked by a very unique serial killer who's been trolling the highway for the past 3 years. And now the killer is after all three of them in this fast-paced and deadly chase novel that will have your heart racing well above the speed limit as the interstate becomes a graveyard. Well, I like interstate killer kind of stories, so that's pretty interesting to me, actually. I haven't been really genuinely interested in a Stephen Graham Jones story for quite some time, so this one might be one I want to read. I don't know about the collector's edition, but it's one I'll want to read. Also on July 15th is a book that I'd so want to read that I asked kindly for the ARC copy and was granted an audiobook. So audiobooks are relatively new to me. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next video because I've taken the plunge. But yeah, Girl in the Creek by Wendy N. Wagner. I'm very interested. I love this cover. It's this watercolor look. It's got this image of a girl in a nightgown. She's floating downstream, apparently quite dead, I believe. She has mushrooms and lichens and things growing out of her cavity in her torso. So it's really quite beautiful. It's this brush stroke yellow font and kind of a pond scum green sans serif font for the author's name. I'm very excited. I was excited just seeing the cover and the title alone. So yes, Buried Secrets Only Spread is the tagline. Erin's brother Brian has been missing for 5 years. It was as if he simply walked into the forests of the Pacific Northwest and vanished. Determined to uncover the truth, Erin heads to the foothills of Mount Hood where Brian was last seen alive. He isn't the first hiker to go missing in the area, and their cases go unsolved. When she discovers the corpse of a local woman in the creek, Erin unknowingly puts herself in the crosshairs of a very powerful force from this world and beyond, hell-bent on keeping their secrets buried. So it sounds like small town horror. I'm not really sure what to expect from this, but people going missing is terrifying. People going missing in the forest is terrifying. Young kids and having their younger siblings searching for answers to their missing sibling in the forest is even scarier to me. So I think this is going to be a fun one. July 15th is kind of action-packed. All of July, there's a lot of books coming out. Not so much in the beginning of the month, but this July 15th until the end of the month, lot of books. So One Yellow Eye, a novel by Lee Radford. And the cover is really kind of hard to describe. It's got like yellows and ochres that make up this face with this bloodless tear, sort of like an anatomical drawing that shows snakes inside. And then I only know there's snakes because there's snakes kind of everywhere. Kind of snakes abound, like snakes are popping, kind of like Medusa style snakes everywhere. Yeah, just kind of lots of snakes. Striking pale yellow stretched serif text surrounds all of this, very text heavy. It's Art Deco but with serifs, so like that's crazy. But I don't know what the book's about from the cover. Having always preferred the company of microbes, Kesta has spent her life looking down the barrel of a microscope rather than cultivating personal relationships. But that changed when Kesta met Tim, her cheerleader, her best friend, her absolute everything. So when he was one of the last people in London to be infected with a perplexing virus that left the city ravaged, Kesta went into triage mode. Though the government has rounded up and disposed of all the infected, Kesta was able to keep her husband unalive and hidden with resources from the hospital where she works. She spends her days reviewing biopsy slides and her evenings caring for him, but he's clearly declining. The sedatives aren't working like they used to, and his violent outbursts are becoming more frequent. So that's very scary sounding, actually. 28 days later, 28 years later is now in our sights. I haven't gone to the theater to see it, but I really like modern takes on zombie 0-day stories, very much so, and these one-on-one closer encounters. If not just following the hordes of zombies. I'd prefer a story that follows the horde, really, honestly. But getting like a bird's eye look from a medical point of view. We have The Last of Us to watch a lot of the survival mode right now, and I'm slowly burnt out on that, as I'm sure a lot of people were watching like Walking Dead. But yeah, this sounds interesting. Even though it's not technically zombies, I will say, I'm aware it doesn't say zombies, but they're zombie-like, right? Infections. Also on July 15th, we have a new book from Sylvia Moreno Garcia called The Bewitching, and has this very like nothing cover. This seems to be a trend. Like, don't tell me anything about the book on the cover. It's this black and gold on forest green. It's really gorgeous. It's a hand in a wording of a mudra underneath of a grosbeak or some bird. It's like a seed-eating bird, regardless. And I don't know if it's got pins in it or it's just radiating awesomeness. I don't really know what's going on in this cover. It's hard to tell. There's black ivy on the edges in like wrought iron kind of decorations. It looks nice. It begins with a quote from a character in the book. "Back then, when I was a young woman, there were still witches." That was how Nana Alba always began the stories she told her great-granddaughter Minerva, stories that have stayed with Minerva all her life. Perhaps that's why Minerva has become a graduate student focused on the history of horror literature and is researching the life of Beatrice Tremblay, an obscure author of macabre tales. In the course of assembling her thesis, Minerva has uncovered information that reveals that Tremblay's most famous novel, The Vanishing, was inspired by a true story. Decades earlier, during the Great Depression, Tremblay attended the same university where Minerva is now studying and became obsessed with her beautiful and otherworldly roommate, who then disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Okay, I wish the cover explained something. I know like a house on the cover, or like to make it the darkest of dark academia, which this is, it seems to me. It needs something else on the cover, perhaps, but I don't know the subgenre well enough. If you do, if you read a lot of dark academia or like dark adult academia, if there's such a thing, let me know if this cover actually like fits and works. It seems to be lacking to me. But yeah, I'm actually listening to the audiobook for a story that has roommates that go suddenly disappeared. So yeah, that's a neat thread. July 22nd, finally on to another day that is chock full of books. July 22nd, Another by Paul Tremblay. The cover, it has this like, it's just a sequel to horror movie, I think. I don't really know 100%. But it could be an alternate cover here for a horror movie by Paul Tremblay, with a boy in a silhouette down a hallway, and his shadow is elongated on the wall, and it looks like there's branches that are surrounding him, sort of becoming antlers and claws. So like, it reminds me very much of Horror Story. Even like just one scene actually out of Horror Story. It's not a spoiler really to say so. Green and yellow, orange and black really dominate this cover. It reminds me also of like children's books, like the cover of Goodnight Moon or something. This very typical fat, rounded serif font that we are now equating with a book from Paul Tremblay, which I don't mind. When Casey Wilson's parents tell him that his friend is coming for a sleepover, he has no idea who it might be. Ever since Zoom incident, everyone treats him like a pariah, and his tics are worse than ever. When Moral appears, he's not like any friend Casey has ever met. His skin is like clay and he doesn't speak, but Casey's parents are too charmed by the strange kid, and it's nice to have someone to talk to besides his sister Allie, who is away at college. As his normally loving parents grow distant from Casey and gush and fawn over Moral, Casey knows something is wrong, but with no end in sight to this sleepover, he's exhausted, and in the dark, out of the corner of his eye, Moral doesn't look like a kid at all. So like a changeling story. I'm pretty interested in this. I really do like Paul Tremblay's work. I think I read almost everything by him at this point. Almost. He's got a lot more books than one would expect, because Knock at the Cabin was not his first rodeo by any means. Now this next book is a one that I really want to catch up with at DreadCon in September. I'm hoping that the author is there. Ghost Orchid Press is the publisher. I hope that they are there as well. This is a book called D'Humour by Michelle Tang, and the cover is a luscious gothic piece with a damask wallpaper in the background, a gilded mirror surrounding the reflection of candles and smoke, and there's jewelry. It's just beautiful. That all sets off this gorgeous letter form, calligraphic kind of gilt text in the center that's just beautiful. It reminds me of something like of the cover of like a Daphne du Maurier book, but du Maurier, which I believe translates from the French to something like to death. And yeah, just very luscious with that font, kind of that Casablanca kind of, I don't know, 50s kind of text, just gorgeous, very Western Gothic looking, all candle flame and smoke. I definitely want this book. Mrs. Mina Braithwaite has never quite fit in to Medella's polite society. Her features are so different from the other noblewomen, more like the city's foreign workers, and she chafes at all the rules. Then there's this furious entity that has followed her for years, crawling from the shadows to hurt her and staining every memory with fear. Desperate for help, Mina crashes a private gathering to see the infamous occultist Alexandre Dumour in action. She does not expect this pull of attraction toward the man, nor his invitation to join him in his work. But Dumour has enemies, dangerous ones, and they dog his steps as closely as Mina's entity does to her. Mina must choose between her old life and the angry spirit that stalks her, or follow the famed occultist down a new path where even worse things might haunt her, like the truth. Dun dun dun. So yeah, I love the cover of this book. I love the setup for this book. This is a debut novel from what I understand, novella perhaps, and yeah, very excited. Also on July 22nd, we have Feeding the Wheel by Michael Bohl-Rice, and this cover is like multicolor oil or chalk pastel, and it's a lot of blacks and hot pinks, looking over this like kind of like idyllic country or parkland kind of countryside thing, lots of grass, and it reminds me like of Color Out of Space or The Endless, that film, if you've watched it. That's what I get this idea of, this like black nothingness hovering over top this idle landscape. Caleb and Marley's first mistake was stumbling into the gruesome sacrifice to the grinding wheel and its gods. Their second was enjoying the benefits it gave them. Now one of them can't get enough, and the other just can't get out. Nothing can ever stop the wheel. And that's all I had for a summary. I'm sure there's more somewhere else online, but the font is really hard to read, I will say. They've got this font in about the same color as the green of the grass, and it's kind of jarring on the eyes, but I'm semi-interested in these kind of slipstream horror, dystopian, weird sci-fi, transgressive fiction picks. And then kind of a hard right back into what I think is going to be just a contemporary gothic. It was Her House First by Cherry Priest. This is also July 22nd. The cover has this like tritone in black, red, and blue. I think it's very like designed to market, and it hits the buttons of like a thriller, a gothic thriller or something. Very font forward with the title in white and the rest in black, a silhouette of a mansion in the sunset. Seems there's a silhouette trend kind of going on here. Silent film star Vanita Ross' malevolent spirit lurks spider-like in her cliffside mansion, a once beautiful home that's claimed countless unlucky souls. And she's not alone. Snared in her terrible web, Inspector Bartholomew Sloane, her eternal nemesis, watches her wreak havoc in helpless horror, shackled by his own guilt and Vanita's unrelenting wrath. Now the house has yet another new owner. This time it's Ronnie Mitchell, a grieving woman who buys the rundown place sight unseen. She arrives armed with an unexpected inheritance, a strong background in renovation, and a blissful ignorance regarding the house's blood-soaked history. But her arrival has stirred up more than just dust and decay. In the shadows, unseen eyes watch. Then a man comes knocking. He brings wild stories and a thinly veiled jealousy, as well as a secret connection to the house that can only lead to violence. Okay, I'm quite interested in this, actually. And this reminds me quite a bit of a Darcy Coates book. And I'm wondering, there was one book in here that was put out by Poison Pen Press, and I'm not sure which one it was. It could be this, because this sounds very Poisoned Pen Press. Also on July 22nd, we have Negative Images by Rebecca Shear Akamelu. And this one has a cover that kind of reminds me of Altered States. Or The Entity. It's another silhouette. It's a silhouetted person kind of pressing up against like a filmy substance of some sort, like as if they're behind a screen. There's oranges and reds with black text, but the stark white micro serif for the font title, which maybe is why it reminds me of The Entity. For some reason, I think that there's a film cover of The Entity that is like that. But yeah, really creepy looking silhouettes. Anita Walsh, still reeling from her husband's sudden death, finds herself haunted not only by grief, but by his negative image. There's capitals on negative and image there. A new phenomenon where the deceased prey on those they loved in life, turning intimate memories into nightmares. The spectral figure uses their shared past as a weapon, systemically dismantling her friendships, career, her self-worth. Desperate for escape, Anita plunges into a quest to sever the ghostly bonds that tie her to her tormentor. As society grapples with the rising terror of NIs, or negative images, a charismatic extremist proposes a radical solution to isolate the haunted from the unafflicted, gaining dangerous followers. Anita, alongside another victim of this spectral affliction, must navigate their personal hauntings and societal threats to prevent breakdown of their community. This kind of reminds me a little bit of Ling Hun. Not that those people were haunted in Ling Hun by malevolent spirits, but it was like people that they knew and loved that they could see and spend time with. And yeah, they definitely had a societal breakdown linked to those specific hauntings. This sounds a lot more dangerous. So yeah, maybe that cover looking something like The Entity was not an accident. Also on July 22nd, we have Red Rabbit Ghost by Jen Julian. And this cover is like this weird duotone of like cerulean cyan with red. A obvious clash. Red and blue definitely clash. And the specific shades used here are nauseating almost. It's interesting though. That's a good choice for horror, right? Like nauseating color choices set you off kilter right away. This rabbit in silhouette exploding with inky flowers, kind of resembling a circulatory system. It doesn't tell me much, but it reminds me a little bit of the cover for Grey Dog, which I loved, absolutely loved that book. So maybe that's good. It's got this white sans serif font that gives it a bit of a Western feel. The town of Black Knot is not what it appears, and a place on its desolate edge known only as the Night House is calling. What remains of Jesse's mother can fit inside an old jerky tin. Photos, postcards, a single worn-out bracelet, but nothing that can explain why she was found dead 18 years earlier on the bank of a river. Her infant son left wailing by her side. When Jesse starts to receive anonymous messages promising him answers, he returns home to the regressive town of Black Knot, North Carolina, so that his lifelong obsession can finally be laid to rest. Intriguing. It doesn't really tell me much about what he's doing. It says that he's going to lay his obsession to rest, but it sounds like he's also laying his mother to rest. So interested to hear more about what this story is about. More on July 22nd, we have The Library at Hellbore by Cassandra Khaw. And I really do like the vibe of Cassandra Khaw's work, so I'm interested to check this out. It has this black fig rotting with a fly, very like Renaissance oil painting looking thing with black hellebore flowers surrounding it in an arched frame. This gothic inspired, really lovely looking cover. It might be another trend after silhouettes, of course, but like it doesn't tell me anything about the story. So I don't know if this is like indicative of the subgenre. It's wonderful to look at. It just doesn't tell us anything about the plot. The Hellbore Technical Institute for the Gifted is a premier academy for the dangerously powerful, the Antichrists and Ragnaroks, the World Eaters and Apocalypse Makers. Hellbore promises redemption, acceptance, and a normal life after graduation. At least that's what Alessa Lee is told after she's kidnapped and forcibly enrolled. But the Institute is more than just a haven for monsters. On graduation day, the faculty embark on a ravenous rampage, feasting on their students. Joy! Trapped in the school's cavernous library, Alessa and her surviving classmates must do something that they've never been taught. Work together. If they don't, the school will eat them alive. in more ways than one. Like, oh my God, that's a very cool summary for a very cool book. Again, with this dark academia, adult horror dark academia, the covers tell us nothing. So I'm very interested in this book. Very, very interested for numerous reasons. If you have read an arc of this, let me know if you liked it. Wrapping up the month on July 29th, we have Blood Slaves by Marcus Redmond, and the cover is quite striking to me. A chained hand is grasping or clutching or crushing a plantation mansion. It's a large sans serif text, what looks like Gil Sans, a very cool font. The style looks like acrylic paint, so it reminds me a lot of those Ghanaian film posters. You can check out Deadly Prey Gallery to see what I'm talking about if you're familiar with the film posters from Ghana. That's what it reminds me of, but well done. Obviously, it looks really good, and it tells a story. I love that about this cover. In 1710, in the province of Carolina, freedom feels impossible for Willie, his beloved Gertie, and their unborn child, as they suffer under the brutal rule of their plantation master, James Barrow. Escape seems like certain death until one night Willie is offered terrifying hope in the form of Rafazi, an enigmatic slave from the kingdom of Ghana, and the last of the Ramanga, I think I'm saying that right, a nearly extinct African vampire tribe. Rafazi, driven by a centuries-old hunger to restore his lost power, sees in Willie a willing subject to be turned and used in a bloody revolt against their oppressors. As Rafazi builds an army of blood slaves bent on revenge, Gertie grows fearful, the dark legacy driving them forward. But Willie, determined to end the cruelty that has plagued his people, believes that only evil can fight evil, and when Gertie stands in the way of Ramanga's return, he must choose between love and vengeance, knowing one thing for certain, that blood will be spilled. I'm very interested in this story. There is a much longer summary as well available out there, and it's fantastic sounding. And I really like the idea that right away I had a feeling this had something to do with a vampire lord from Ghana, just based on that very specific painting style alone. Really, really cool stuff. So if you're into alternate vampires, check this out. Also, July 29th, I think we've only got one or two books to go, one at least, Asylum Hotel by Juliet Blackwell. This has this Art Deco lilac over a photographic image. Now, Art Deco text over a photograph really doesn't work usually for me. And it's got these like really pleasing sunset colors, but this hint of blue sea at the bottom. So it looks so much more like a romance cover. The hint of horror, perhaps, is in the lighted windows, maybe, but let me know what you think. Audrey is drawn to abandoned places with hidden histories, and Hotel Sebring, a once glamorous 1920s seaside retreat now slated for renovation, is the perfect subject to photograph. Locals whisper that it's haunted by the ghosts of two young women who died there, and when Aubrey visits to capture photos, she meets Dmitry Petrov, a minor online celebrity who shares her obsession with the site. The next day, Dmitry is found dead at the base of a cliff, and though police rule that it might be an accident, rumors of murder and past deaths tied to the hotel cause Aubrey to investigate. As she uncovers the building's roots as an asylum, Dmitry's rivalries, and a decades-old unsolved murder with very chilling similarities, it becomes clear that someone will do anything to keep the hotel's secrets buried. Part of me is guessing it's the hotel itself, but that remains to be seen. Interested to know if there's going to be an alternate cover someday. And the last book on the 29th is Angel Down by Daniel Kraus. I really enjoyed Blood Sugar. I have not read Whalefall yet. This cover, there's a different one for the hardcover, and the paperback one is a little more striking. It's got this black sans serif font, very striking. It's got this like 4-color explosion, like a fiery explosion, with a feather, one single white feather in the center. It owes itself that double entendre of Angel Down. So Angel Down, like a helicopter down, like Black Hawk Down, or Angel Down, like the downy feathers of angel's wings. I was struck by the title and really enjoyed this cover the most. Private Cyril Bagger has managed to survive the unspeakable horrors of the Great War through his wits and deception, swindling fellow soldiers at every opportunity. but his survival instincts are put to the ultimate test when he and 4 other grunts are given a deadly mission: venture into the perilous no man's land to euthanize a wounded comrade. What they find amid the ruined battlefield, however, is not a man in need of mercy, but a fallen angel, seemingly struck down by artillery fire. The celestial being may hold the key to ending the brutal conflict, but only if the soldiers can suppress their individual desires and work together. As jealousy, greed, and paranoia take hold, the group is torn apart by their inner demons, threatening to turn their angelic encounter into a descent into hell. So, interested. It sounds kind of like a Polinick book, does it not? So, this one is going to be on the patron pick poll, I think, because it might be a book that I read eventually, someday, but there's so many books on this list that I really want to get. I can think of at least 4 or 5 right off. So I think this will be on the patron poll alongside all of those dark academia books. That was a lot of books. I remember last month saying it seems all those horror authors are taking a break right now or something. I know that there was, of course, StokerCon, the Horror Writers Association Bram Stoker Awards banquet, so maybe everyone was taking a break and a lot of books got pushed out after the fact. I mean, these are all going to be contenders for those who are nominated for the next year's awards for sure, but like there's like a break maybe people take around June. Maybe it's just too hot. It has been too hot around here and probably where you are too, judging from the weather reports around the world. A lot of these books, like this last book by Danielle Kraus, are going to be on my patron picks poll. I can think of about 4 or 5 of the books here that I can't decide between. Sure, I'm going to pick some up at DreadCon, maybe in September, but before then, there's quite a few to choose from. So there will be a choice. If there's something in the specific list that you think I ought to read, let me know. Or if there's something that has come out this month, this coming month in July, that is not on the list that you think should have been, also let me know so I can try and hunt down books better next time. I do curate these lists, so if you're looking for something that is more like thriller or more YA, there's definitely other lists and other booktubers doing cool lists like this. This is really specifically usually horror, dyed-in-the-wool horror with covers that appeal to me. So if you've read something on this, I know a lot of us get advanced reading copies, let me know. I'm very curious about some of the books that I wasn't sure if the summary really described what was going on. I would love to hear more, or if you're going to pick up some of these books, definitely let me know. Thank you so much for watching and have an ooky, spooky day.